After this, now I invite Dr. Atul Patel. Atul is a great friend of mine. He is a chief consultant and director of the Infectious Disease Clinic at the Vedanta Institute of Medical Science in Ahmedabad. I would say he is a very young person, but wonderful knowledge in case of the infectious disease, not only fungus, any infectious disease, he can pick up very fast. So I am inviting Atul to pick up this topic, updates on newer antifungal agents.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Professor Chakrabarty, for a nice introduction. I'm going to introduce the newer antifungals to this audience. I do not have any conflict of interest for this talk. Now, Professor Chakrabarty has already introduced why we need newer antifungal, right? And what are the challenges associated with newer antifungals? The most important challenge that we are facing with newer antifungal agent is that there are many similarities between the fungal, that is the fungi are the eukaryotics, and the human or the mammalian cells. And that's the reason that whenever you are looking for a new target, it's obviously hurting the mammalian cells and produces major or the many unwanted toxicities. When you looked at the effect of the currently available antifungal agents, mainly it acts on the fungal RNA synthesis or cell wall or the membrane components of fungi. Right? So these are the few important targets for the currently available antifungal agents. And we know that like emergence of resistance, Professor Chakrabarty has also highlighted the same, is very important and major concerns to a mankind. And this resistance is mainly because of two things. One is overexpressions of the efflux pump. You know that the P glycoprotein efflux pump is very important in pushing any molecules inside the cell, and it generally push out of these molecules from within the cells to the extracellular component, and that's how it reduces the concentration, effective concentration of the drug within the cells. And the second important concern with resistance or the mechanism of resistance would be biofilm productions, right? And the fungi are a very important pathogens which produces early biofilm and leads to the resistance. The overview of my talk would be like I'm going to speak on the newer antifungal agents which are in the pipeline. I'm also going to focus on the newer formulations of available antifungal agents like the liposomal formulations and the lipid formulations. I'm not going to discuss this because these are the old molecule, but I'm going to discuss about the suba-itraconazoles and the posaconazole delayed version. And I'll briefly give you the outline of isavuconazole. And lastly, I'll tell you about the repurposing the other molecules which can be used to treat fungal infections in clinical practice. So coming to newer antifungal agents which are in pipeline, we know that ergosterol is the most common target for our antifungal agents, and the azoles are one of them. Azoles depletes the ergosterol on the cell wall, and it produces either static or the saddle effect on fungi. But if you look at the limitations, why we are not fully satisfied with the currently available triazole or the azole, the major limitations of current formulation is that azole, because of it has a great activity on CYP450 system. This system is a very important system located mainly into the liver, but also present into the GI tract, which leads to the metabolisms of many of the drugs, right? So currently available azole, which has got a significant interaction because they do inhibit as well as they do metabolize by this CYP450 system, especially the CYP3A4 is an enzyme which is inhibited by the currently available azole drugs. Right, so this is a major limitation, and because of this, we have significant drug-drug interactions with other drugs that patients might be taking for some other medical conditions. So to overcome this limitation, the newer azole has been developed, which is again having a mechanism of action on the same ergosterol moiety. But this newer azole, which is not triazole, it is a tetrazole moiety, and which has got a greater specificity for CYP51 system. And CYP51 has nothing to do with the other drug metabolism. So this enzyme 51 has less significant drug interactions issues compared to CYP450 system. And this has been achieved by, I told you that triazole has been replaced with the tetrazole group. So this results into the fewer drug-drug interactions, and the molecule which is available in the investigational are VT1161, 1129, and 1598. Let us see the activity of all these newer agent which has got activity on ergosterol moiety. This 1161 has main activity against Candida species with very low MIC for Candida. And it is also active against some of the fluconazole as well as the echinocandin resistant Candida species. It also has effect on the coccidioidomycosis as well as the trichophyton, right? So it is more or less similar to fluconazole with less drug-drug interaction, but advantage of having effect on fluconazole as well as echinocandin resistant Candida species. The second molecule which is in the pipeline and in the investigation is VT1129, which is structurally very similar to the 1161, but it has got a potent in vitro activity against yeast, including Candida and Cryptococcus, including Cryptococcus getii. We know that Cryptococcus getii has higher MIC and chances of resistance is much more common, right? So this newer VT1129 specifically acts on all the Candida species as well as the Cryptococcus species. This VT1598, which has got a very broad spectrum activity. So apart from the yeast, it also takes care of the mold infection, including the Aspergillus, all the Aspergillus species, including the Fumigatus, Flavus, Niger, and the Terrius. Plus, Rhizopus erizus also has some species of Rhizopus erizus also found to be susceptible to this new VT1598. All the endemic fungi, including blastomyces, coccidioids, and histoplasma, they showed very good in vitro lower MIC and susceptibility. So I think this newer drug, 1598, which has less drug-drug interactions and broader spectrum, probably is very promising for our clinicians. Now coming to the next target, we know that beta-D-glucan is a very important target for, and the echinocandins are developed by acting on the beta-D-glucan moiety. But if you look at the limitations of currently available echinocandin, that you need to give daily intravenous injections to treat your fungal infections, and you cannot have any oral formulations. So these are the two important limitations of currently available echinocandins or the drugs acting on the target beta-D-glucan. So we have two new strategies to overcome these limitations. One is the agent which can have a longer half-life. So you need to administer them less frequently rather than daily. You can extend the administration frequency to once a week or so. An agent which can be orally administered, right? So these are the two strategies the scientists are working on. And we have CD101. Now it is named as a biofungin, which was previously termed as SP3025. This new biofungin has a potent activity against both Candida as well as the Aspergillus species, just like any other echinocandins. But the interesting part of this biofungin is that it has got a very long half-life of 80 hours. And this makes that this drug can be administered once a week. So this is an advantage. So rather than giving a daily injections with a biofungin, probably you can reduces the frequency of administrations to once a week. The another important the echinocandin molecule, that is SCY078, which is now termed as enfumafungin, which is structurally different from echinocandins, but it acts on the beta-D-glucan receptors, right? So the mechanism of action is almost same. It acts on the same pathway, which is active against candida and some molds, just like the spectrum is similar to other echinocandins. But the important pharmacokinetic advantage with this new antifungal drug agent is it is orally absorbed, right? So you can give intravenous, and once patient stabilize, you can go back to oral. So you can switch from intravenous to oral. And currently both intravenous and the oral formulations are being developed for this beta-D-glucan receptor and antifungals. So apart from these two old targets like ergosterol and beta-D-glucan, the scientists have also looked at some novel targets to inhibit the fungi. And out of these novel targets being tried, some of the targets had shown some activities as antifungal, and this target is glycosyl phosphodiethyl inositol biosynthesis pathway. And the drug which is being developed with inhibiting this pathway is AX001, which is a broad spectrum agent which has potent activity against Candida, Aspergillus, Fusarium, and Scedosporium. So this is advantage of this molecule because we know that we do not have a good agent with activity against Fusarium as well as the Scedosporium. But there is no activity of against the Candida krusei and the Mucorales, right? But the important advantage here would be Fusaria and the Scedosporium. The another target being evaluated as an antifungal agent is fungal pyrimidine biosynthesis pathway. And the drug named is F901318, and which has a potent in vitro activity against variety of mold infections, endemic fungi, which includes Aspergillus, Scedosporium, Acremonium, Bacillomyces, Scrophulopiosis, Telleromyces, Blasto, Histo, and the Coccidiido. Right, so this drug has very good activity against endemic as well as some molds, but no activity against yeast and the mucorales. Right, so this is another novel pathway. And the another third important novel pathway is very exciting to all clinicians, including me. And what scientists are working on this pathway, that they have looked into the siderophores. We know that iron is very important for survival of any organisms, including bacteria and the fungi. So with active replications of bacterial infections and the fungal infections, they need iron for their existence or survival. So the scientists has looked into this target, and what they developed this siderophore, that is VL2397. This is again an investigational agent which is structurally related to the siderophore, Siderophore ferrichrome, and it is taken up by the Aspergillus fumigatus cells where with the siderophore transporter, that is SIT1. And how this acts, let me explain the drug which is already been approved on 14th November 2019. So just before 15 days, this drug has been approved for the treatment of bacterial infections. So that drug is called as cefiderocol. And how this drug acts? This is a cephalosporin in conjugation with this the siderophore moiety. So these siderophores are the enzymes secreted by the microorganisms into the surrounding environment to scavenge the available iron. And it also gets iron from the ferritin also, and as well as the free iron. So once this siderophore combines with the irons or scavenges the iron, the bacteria or the particle or the fungal cells will allow this siderophore, which is in conjugation with the iron, into the within the cells. So the main important mechanism of resistance, that is impermeability, is not here, because the organisms wants this siderophore inside for their existence. So along with this siderophore, that is iron, these antimicrobial agents, either it is a cephalosporin or this newer antifungal, that is VL2397, will be internalized by these fungal cells, and where the drug is going to act and produces killing. The expected results of these conjugations of this siderophore moiety with antimicrobial agent is that the scientists are expecting excellent results, especially there is 1,000-fold reductions in MIC of these the agents. There will be a modification of the spectrum activity where the gram positive has now activity against the gram negative bacteria also with these newer combinations. And there will be increased susceptibility and enhanced potencies against the multi-drug resistance bacteria. So we know that the gram negative, especially the Acinetobacter and the Klebsiella, they are resistant to almost all the antimicrobial agents, right? So with this newer target, Sidrophore, because the bacteria will internalize this antibiotic, so antibiotic gets a chance to act on this. So this is, I think, this is a very important and interesting molecule in pipeline. Now coming to the second part of our talk, that is the newer formulations of itraconazoles, posaconazoles, right? And then we'll brief about isavuconazole. We know that itraconazole is excellent drug in clinical practice, and it is available since many years, and it has got a good spectrum of activity against yeast as well as the mold. But the main limitations of itraconazole is that the bioavailability is very erratic, and the bioavailability can be up to 52% when it is consumed with food, and you have to avoid all the acid suppressing agents, right? So if you are not instructing your patients about this, that they have to consume this drug with the food, and cola will facilitate the absorption, and by chance if they are taking either ranitidine or famotidine or pantoprazole or some acid reducing agents, the bioavailability can be up to 0, right? So drug is not going to absorb when you are concomitant use of acid reducing agents. So this is the main limitations of use of the itraconazole in clinical practice. But this new technology has been developed, that is superior bioavailability, that is called as SUBA. This SUBA technology is a novel technology for enhancing the bioavailability of poorly soluble drugs like itraconazole. And what this technology use, they utilize the solid dispersion of the drug in a polymer. So this polymer covered drug will be slowly released into the area from where the drug is being absorbed. And this will lead to the enhanced absorption, improve the pharmacokinetics, or improve the bioavailability of the conventional agents which has got a poor bioavailability like itraconazole. And there are many studies been done with the pharmacokinetics of these SUBA preparations of itraconazole. And last year, they published this in Open Forum Infectious Disease. Actually, this is an abstract presented into the IDWeek conference. And what they found that this red line is the persons, these are the healthy volunteers. So red line represents the persons who are consuming the SUBA itraconazole with food, and this is a fasting, right? So what they found that this is a day. So from day 7 onwards, the persons, even irrespective of fed or fasting, they achieve adequate inhibitory levels of itraconazoles into the blood. And this graph represents every hourly the change in the blood levels of itraconazole. So again, this is the fed level and this is the fasting level. You can see that, I mean, there is adequate absorption irrespective of fasting or the fed conditions of the healthy volunteers with this SUBA itraconazole preparation. So probably this drug is again very promising because we know the activity of itraconazole. Now coming to the posaconazole. We know that posaconazole suspension has several limitations, and most important limitations when you are aiming for a therapeutic use of posaconazole is that you have to administer every 6 hourly for first week, along with the feed, along with the fatty food. And most of these patients who are unable to consume a food, you can't ensure adequate absorptions of this suspension suspension posaconazole, right? And 6 hourly means it is not possible for a patient to take these medications every 6 hours, like 6 o'clock in the morning, 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and again 12 o'clock in the midnight. And they have to consume some food to ensure absorption. So it is highly inconvenient for a first week time. And on second week onwards, you can reduce the frequency of administrations to 12 hourly, right? So 10 ml, 12 hourly. Again, you have to consume it with the food. So patients who cannot have appetite, or patients who are having a GI disturbance or vomiting and unable to consume a diet, I mean, these are not a good candidate for posaconazole suspension treatment. So this is a major limitation of this posaconazole suspension, despite it is an excellent molecule to treat. So to overcome these limitations, the posaconazole delayed release tablet has been formed, and it is now US FDA approved, and it is available in developed country. And the advantages of this posaconazole delayed release tablet, again, it is a polymer the base formulations, that it achieves early the steady state level compared to a posaconazole suspension. Posaconazole suspension generally takes 7 days to reach a steady state level when you have administered properly, while this posaconazole tablet achieves a steady state level within 24 to 48 hours time. So early you will get a good adequate levels of this posaconazole when you are using delayed release tablet. And the second advantage is that in clinical trials, it has been found that when you are using posaconazole delayed release tablet, the patient's the trough level, target trough level is much higher compared to when patients are consuming the same dose in suspension form, right? So higher the level that you are going to achieve, early steady state level, and the most important thing is that convenience. You have to give after loading dose once a day, right? So this is most convenient to administer to a patients. The limitation is that you cannot crush the tablet because you cannot crush and give through the rice tube feeding. And if you co-administered the GI prokinetic drugs, you can have the lower level of posaconazole delayed release tablet. The another newer formulations is intravenous formulation. Again, it contains cyclodextrin. So you have to be very careful when you are using posaconazole intravenous formulations to a patient who has renal insufficiency. And the second thing that you need is central line for administrations of posaconazole intravenous, right? So you cannot infuse through a peripheral line. So these are the two limitations. Otherwise, POSA IV is again good, having a good pharmacokinetics. This is a newer agent, isavuconazole, and we are expecting isavuconazole available for Indian clinicians in early 2020. And again, it acts on the same pathway, that is ergosterol synthesis inhibitor. And it has got a very good activity. Professor Chakravarti has already introduced that this drug has good activity against all the molds, including mucormycosis. And it has got inferior activities against the yeast preparation that is Candida. Dosage recommendation and everything is same. And the advantage has also been emphasized by Professor Chakravarti that it is a water-soluble drug. And if you look at the pharmacokinetics of isavuconazole, it is probably matching with the fluconazole pharmacokinetics. So you can easily interchange intravenous dosage to the oral dosage without compromising the trough level of this isavuconazole, right? So it is an excellent drug with the same limitations of other triazole, that it cannot have a good penetrations into the CSF brain parenchyma, the eye penetrations and the renal penetrations, right? So these are the standard limitations of triazoles, which also shared by isavuconazole. So you cannot use isavuconazole when somebody is having infection in these sanctuary sites. Now coming to the last part of my talk, and that is like repurposing the medications for antifungals. Now there are several medications which are available, and the scientists are looking at repurposing all these molecules for treatment of some other infections. And the old example, like if you remember, that nitazoxanide is a wonderful drug for treatment of cryptosporidia, even though like it has not shown to be great active against cryptosporidia, but this was the only drug which is available to treat a patient who has severe diarrhea with the cryptosporidia. And this nitazoxanide has found to be effective for treatment of hepatitis C, that is a viral infection, and especially genotype 6, and it was studied extensively into the Egypt. And the monotherapy with nitazoxanide was found to reduces the viral load of hepatitis C and suppress the HCV. It has also been found to be active against influenza A and influenza B. So along with oseltamivir, nitazoxanide has been used with oseltamivir for treatment of severe influenza. So this is how like you can have repurposing of the molecule which has been approved for use in other conditions can be found to have activity against something else. So the cryptosporidial activity has been extended to the antiviral activities with nitazoxanide. Similarly, we know that the solid organ transplant recipient patients, they are receiving calcineurin inhibitors like the tacrolimus or the cyclosporin, and both these agents and rapamycin, they do have activity against fungus because of these the receptors that fungi has having, and this drug can be combined with other antifungal agents to take care of this cryptococcal or the candida infections in the post-transplant patients. So this is a repurposing of post-transplant or having getting a benefit of keeping a cyclosporin or the tacrolimus on board along with the antifungal agents to take care of the invasive fungal infection in transplant patients. We know that rifampicin, which inhibits the RNA polymerase and having an excellent activity against Mycobacterium tuberculosis complex. So it can be combined along with amphotericin and the other antifungal agents to broaden the spectrum and to improve the efficacy. But at the same time, you have to be very careful for toxicities. Sertraline is an antidepressant drug or the antipsychiatric drug, has been extensively studied in last couple of years for activity against the cryptococci. And in vitro, they found that when you add sertraline, it rapidly inhibits the colony-forming units of cryptococci. So there are several studies been done using sertraline along with standard anti-cryptococcal agents, but the results are not promising, and there are no additional survival benefit or survival advantage when you use sertraline. But sertraline is such a drug that it has got an antifungal activity. Tamoxifen, we know that it is used for the breast cancer, and it is also found to have activity against the cryptococcal meningitis along with the standard antifungal agents. And these calcium channel blockers like verapamil, again, it has got some broad spectrum antifungal activity, so you can possibly explore the use of verapamil with any other antifungal agents for treatment of invasive fungal infections. Just to summarize this talk on these newer agents, so there are many newer antifungal agents with newer targets, and some of the targets are very exciting to us in the pipeline. And these tetrazole antifungal drugs, because they act on CYP51 system, they have less drug-drug interactions. So I think these are the promising agents. The repurposing the other agents indications are under evaluation, though sertraline study has not shown any promise in clinical practice, but I think we should continue to explore and found out the activity of these other molecules. And the newer formulations, that is suba-itraconazole and the posaconazole delayed release tablet, they have improved the bioavailability and improved the pharmacokinetics of these drugs, which is very useful in treatment of invasive fungal infections. And isavuconazole, a water-soluble antifungal drug, has broad spectrum antifungal activity. Again, it can be given IV and oral, so I think it is very promising to use in clinical practice. Thank you very much for the patience listening.